Hello, everybody. Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. This is Cherie Burton. Grateful to be with you. I feel so blessed to have this podcast. It grounds me. It keeps me in flow with what's happening energetically, not buying into the fear and just talking to people who get what's happening underneath. And there's no better time than the present for people to step into their soul path and claim who they are and answer the call of their heart, or their destiny is leading them in terms of planetary healing, because we're all here in some small or large part to contribute to bringing more people back to a remembrance of who they are, to a completion of their wholeness cycle. And that's the entire reason I started this podcast, so that women could find, not only just seek, but find wholeness. And my belief is that it resides in us without us ever having to do, be, feel, or think anything. It's just there. So today's guest is my good friend and soul brother, Saje Flow. And we met in Costa Rica. We'll talk about how we met. He is an international speaker and mindset coach who specializes in the 7 Identities framework to enlighten entrepreneurs, and I would say specifically female entrepreneurs, because we are in this era of rising feminine empowerment. So as an entrepreneur his whole life, he has just felt drawn to create abundance. So he'll share his story with us and how his abundant creation methods have really spoken to thousands of people. And this man does workshops all over. He's got a lot of positive energy, and you're going to love what he has to share. He'll talk to us about how to naturally step into each of your 7 identities, and we'll explain what those are, and how to get out of like achieving and proving and into just authentic influencing and empowerment. So if you have in your heart to reach people, how do you do that and not get caught up in the whole performance-based worth story, right? And just show up in who you are. And then he's going to share with us a secret to living. So I thought it was super profound, and it's going to be one of my new mantras now. Saje Flow, thank you so much for coming on, embracing me and all the listeners with your amazing presence.
Oh, thank you so much, Cherie. I really am appreciative and grateful for this opportunity to co-create this experience with you.
I just have to say, I need to share with the listeners how we met. You're one of the people I met in Costa Rica, along with your fiance, Marissa, and you were helping to facilitate part of that retreat in beautiful Costa Rica when Jeff and I went through for this couples retreat, marriage retreat. And I have to say, like, I was really struck by your presence. You just have this very welcoming, but wise and friendly aura about you that's very approachable, but also commands respect. So I just wanted to honor you for your presence and how you drew me into your space of just wanting to get to know you better. And of course, your lovely fiance, who Marissa, who has been a joy to get to know her as well.
Thank you so much. It was such a blessing to be in that beautiful energy and to be in that space with you and deep diving and just like getting really raw and like going, right?
Crying and dancing. And
yes, it's just like feeling all the human emotions. And really, I want to say that it was such a beautiful experience with you in that space. And I always holds a piece of that in my heart of our time there.
Yes.
And we got to go back.
I know it's incredible. Like reunion time, but I know that you and Marissa are getting married this summer. And I know that you have created a space where people can gather in San Diego. And so I'm looking forward to that reunion at your place, bringing in more creation. And, here's the other thing that really struck me that you said, and no one ever says this, so I'm just going to tell the listeners what you said to me. You said flat out, unequivocally, in my life, I will facilitate 1 billion breakthroughs. And I'm like, what? Like, I could see 1 million, but like for me personally, I never thought that big. Tell me how you got to that. And we'll get to your story, but I'm just curious where that came from.
From my journey, like I had always played small before. right? And in the past, I wouldn't share like what I'm out creating in the world, or I was maybe part of me felt that fear of like, well, what if I don't hit it? What if I don't reach those goals, right? And
Mm.
so what I realized is when I started this whole journey of really uh, impacting the world, really making a difference. I didn't start at a billion breakthroughs. I started at, I think it was like 3 million at first, and then 5 million. And then one of my coaches, he mentioned, like, does this number scare you? Right? And I was
It
like,
scared
you know,
me when you told me.
I was like, people underestimate what they can do. They overestimate what they can do in a year.
Mm.
They underestimate what they can do in a decade. And they definitely underestimate what they can do in a lifetime.
Wow.
Right. So when I was thinking about that and I was pondering, I was like, you know what? Like that, I feel like if I do this for my life, this is what I'm dedicating the next 100 years of my life towards, right? Uh,
Mm.
what what would that really look like? And I searched within me. I do a lot of meditation and just getting grounded. And 1 billion breakthroughs came up, right?
Well, it
Where
has
it's like,
great alliteration, and it's amazing that it just came to you, like it just distilled on you. Like, why dream small? Like, spirit doesn't move in small ways, you know?
exactly, like I realized that the same energy that you're playing small versus you're playing for a big lifelong ambition, it's the same type of energy. So why sell yourself short? And I realized on my journey that it was these limiting beliefs that was holding me back. Right,
Yeah.
it was these limiting beliefs of like, am I enough to reach however many people, right? And then just set this intention. I meditate on it. I when I before after I wake up and before I go to bed, I meditate on it. I say it out loud, and it's just been really amazing that when you set an intention that's more specific, and I have a date too. The more
Do you
specific.
share it? Like, can you share it, or is that sacred to you?
Yeah, yes, of course. So my for the date is August 18th, 2028,
Woohoo. So
8:18 p.m.
and that's in 8
Yes.
more years.
And that's in 8 years. And the logical mind is like, well, how do I get that number versus this way versus no, this is my outcome. This is what I'm doing. And again, the breakthroughs, I got more clear on how to break down the billion breakthroughs. At first it was like, and I shared this with Tony Robbins, right? I shared it with them at one of the events. I'm part of his platinum family. And so I was dancing. I was like, oh, I want to talk to him. And I was dancing, and all of a sudden he showed up next to me, and I shared with him 1 billion breakthroughs, right? And then after that, I got more clear on how to reach that billion. And it's actually to teach at least 10,000 influencers
Mm,
the belief system so that they can become sages
mm,
who have the freedom to share, measurably influence, and co-elevate at least 33,000 people,
mm,
right? So I'm defining influencers as people who giving back, right? As people who are contributing, who are giving back to the world. And since I got more clear, it's about empowering others, because that 1 billion breakthroughs doesn't have to be directly from me,
right.
right? Like I remember the about 4 months ago, I was at this investors meeting, and I had an opportunity to connect with this guy who was a billionaire, right? And I asked him, "Hey, I have a gift for you. You're out impacting the world. You're out making all these differences. Can you spare like 5 minutes of your time?" And we walked into the back alley of where the meeting was, and I gave him this process, and he just like lit up. I just like, part of my journey is to remind people of their greatness that they already have within them,
Mm,
right? And so
yeah.
that one act of giving, right? Uh, he can go on to create however many more companies that impacts however many more Boom, there you have it. 1
But you
billion.
just gave him, yeah, you just gave him that one liner that he needed. I think we do underestimate the personal contribution, even our energy makes, right? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
it's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I love that your teacher taught you that we grossly underestimate our ability to how many people and that ripple effect, right? But with
The
you getting, I
ripple
just think
effect.
it's beautiful that you're so intentional about that number and that it came to you in meditation. And I know you're a
Mm-hmm.
huge meditator, and I want to get to that. But if we could start just with your story. I know your story, and it's very inspirational where you came from and how you've gotten to
Mm-hmm.
where you are now. So can you share with our listeners your journey a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So I came to America when I came to Los Angeles from Taiwan when I was about 5 years old. And I came with my mother and my two older brothers. And at the time, I didn't understand as a 5 year old why I couldn't be with my dad. Right. So I listened in on, my parents arguing about about money, about the lack of money. Right. And so as a 5 year old, uh, I believe that there's something called the genesis of identity between the ages of 3 to 10, where something happens, where you feel some kind of pain. And from that pain, you develop a belief system or a belief, right? And so as a child, I thought, oh, the solution, it's about achieving, it's about proving myself so that I am actually deep down feel worthy that my father, who had to stay in Asia, uh, that I'm worthy of his love, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that on my journey. I thought it was just about achieving. I thought it was just about, okay, how do I grow abundance? And you know, I started a business in my mom's garage with a few $100s, right, as a student, and just figure out a way to do arbitrage, where I got very lucky, um, and figuring out a way to grow abundance from nothing. And then in 2008, I went all in on real estate, right? So just recognizing the opportunity, like what
2008.
if,
That's when everything crashed.
yes, I recognize that where fear is the greatest, right, is actually what if you can reframe that to rising above the self doubt, the fear, and finding ways to add value to the world where it might not seem like it's actually the case.
Well, that's
and
where we're at right now. Would you not agree? I mean, when we can get to this later, but I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of parallels between right now and 2008.
Yes, there is. And, Warren Buffett talks about this as well. Like when people are greedy, be afraid. And when people are afraid, you know, uh,
Oh
be
no, we
greedy
don't want to
is
be
what I said.
greedy
Yeah. Yeah.
in a nice
That's
way.
what yeah, in a nice way. Um, so yeah, none of that achievement prepared me for having gone through the dark night of the soul, of having gone through a divorce, right, from a 15-year relationship that just left me in such pain and like hopelessness. There was about 6 months of my life where I was just in depression. I was just, after the divorce, I was like kind of stuck in this room where it just, all I could see was out of the filter of darkness, right?
Mm.
And I remember hitting an emotional rock bottom, right? One night, getting a phone call and from my ex and saying that she was getting remarried. And that night, like I was beating myself up. I wonder, like we all do this to some degree of judging ourselves at times, right?
Mm.
And so that night, I just went to the dark night of the soul, and I realized um, that something something changed in a moment where it was like a light bulb of gratitude just started warming my heart, that I felt such love for so many years. And now it embarked me on this journey of really discovering who I am, of
Mm.
really asking the questions of, well, you know what is life about? And so I went on this beautiful journey of self-discovery, and I just discover my path, because I've been to that edge of darkness where at times people jump off, right? But I went to that edge, and then I was able, once I started sharing with people, then people started sharing with me. And I started realizing that, wow, there's a lot of stuff that people are going through. Like one of my friends' mother had cancer, and he doesn't really talk about it, right? And so what I realized as part of my journey is to help people so that they have the belief system so that they can share. Because by sharing your story, by sharing your hero's journey, or the trials and tribulations, or the things you had to overcome on your journey, you are inspiring others. Because how many of us go through similar things, whether it's being bullied or made to feel like not enough at some point in our lives, right?
Right.
And so that's where I discovered.
I know that this is where you and I kind of bonded in Costa Rica, is that when you were talking about the dark night of the soul, whenever anyone uses that phrase, I'm like, my ears just perk up. It's, and I say this literally on every episode. My listeners are probably so sick of it, but every single person that I have interviewed, and this is episode 77, on this show, and anyone honestly that I've ever met who's in some kind of powerful influencing role of some sort, has passed through that quote unquote dark night of the soul. And there's many different phrases and terms for it. And I've actually got 2 episodes dedicated specifically to what that is.
Beautiful.
But it is a rite of passage into your true purpose and path and destiny. That you go through a question, and you nailed it. Like, you're in the dark night of the soul when you're questioning your own identity, that you see yourself apart from the world, almost like you're totally alone, and you're asking the deeper questions. Maybe you're in fetal position, maybe you're sobbing, maybe you're just in a crisis in your soul, and you're like, what is real? What is up? What is down? What is true? Who do I trust? And it's actually just such a portal to power, because you're facing these questions that you never really would have examined had you not gone through, had you not been in that space. So I just wanted to say that that's one of the reasons I connected to you, because that really is a place where you get to rise up. The only way is up. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So, but you've always been interested in entrepreneurialism. Like, you've always been interested in finding a pathway to abundance and creation of abundance.
Yes, that's a part of an identity that I grew up with, and the pain and suffering made me realize that it had nothing to do with that, right? So it's still part of me in the sense of, how do I contribute and add value to the world? But it's definitely been reframed as, I think, as a child, thinking that, oh, how can I save my mom from working 2 jobs, right? How can I save my father from, having all these responsibilities and not being able to see his family, right? And so there's a shift in the perception of what abundance means. And one of the things that really has opened up my heart is when I just started giving, and giving without expectation. And I just started really sharing, giving, even like giving smiles, or like just giving some compliments, or just authentic, and just giving from that space has really opened up my heart, because just my world started shifting. Like, for example, I remember, this is a perfect example. I remember when I was 18, so I went to UCLA, and I live in Westwood, which is a very affluent area. And I was walking down Westwood Boulevard, and I saw this like Ferrari drive by. And as an 18-year-old kid, I was like, whoa, that's so cool. So I was like watching it, right? And then as I was watching it, it suddenly came into view. There was a homeless person sitting on a bench, and I was following the car, and then there was this still frame right in front of me, like a picture still frame of this Ferrari and this person who's sleeping on the bench. And that like jarred me, like I ran home. I was like, I want to make a difference. How do I make a difference? And so I started to volunteer at shelters and things like that, passing out food. And as I was passing out these bologna sandwiches, I realized they don't seem that happy when they're eating this. And then so I thought of this idea, which was a project chicken feast, right? Because at the time I was in college, I myself was eating a lot of, those Costco chickens or Ralph's
Oh, the
chickens,
chicken
like
bake
five.
things? The chicken bake.
Yeah. The chicken bake. Yeah. So like I would, during college, I would eat that all the time. And so I was like, you know what? What if I created something where I raised money and I bought all this chicken and called it Project Chicken Feast, and just give out chicken, not during the holidays, just like on a normal day, just to let them know that somebody cares, right? And at the time, I was pretty shy, and so I I spent the whole summer taking a public speaking course, and finally mustering the courage and started asking, for contribution, and then like calling Ralph's like 15 times to get a discount, which they finally gave me a discount. And then I I, I went with a few of my friends, and we went out to Santa Monica, and we passed out these chicken and a Coke. And I sat there on the bench watching all these people eat the chicken that I, went from ideation to reality. And I felt this joy in my heart that taught me that, Tony Robbins talks about this as well, that the secret to living is giving. And it's just from that, like I realized, yeah, I'm just going to give the entire journey.
I love
And
that.
so now
I love that. Let's just sit with that truth bomb for a minute there from Tony Robbins. The secret to living is giving. I absolutely love that.
It's such a powerful thing, because that's part of one of our human needs, right? And so when we get stressed out, when we're like in this space of all this transition with COVID and all these things that are going on, and when we get in that space of like questioning or anxiety or suffering, where is the focus on, right? Because sometimes it's on ourselves. But what I found is that when you're stepping into the light to share and to give from your heart, there's just something that rises up within you, and to share that with the world. And so that's why right now I'm.
Oh, go ahead. I was just say, like, it feels like we're so engineered to not be an island. Like when you're in the middle of the dark night, like you don't feel like you're living because you're so isolated and you're inside and processing, and that's really powerful. But when you come out of it, like you said, to really heal that, to be ignited again, it's like you've got to find your contribution. You've got to find your medium of service and giving. Otherwise, you'll keep cycling in that victim mode, and you never really get out of the dark night.
Yes. And what you mentioned is so true, is that like pain can be one of the greatest teachers.
Yes.
Right. Like, because you're going to pay attention. And when you reframe not as, the victim mentality, when you give up power, like, oh, this happened to me, right? Then you're powerless to do anything about it. But if you reframe it, like whatever pain and whatever suffering, whatever challenges you've gone through, if you reframe it as an opportunity to teach someone else, to share that journey with someone else, so that you can pay it forward in teaching people, like from sharing from your dark night of the soul, then it changes the game.
Yeah.
Because you're contributing to others. You're contributing to, like, hey, this is what happened. But rather than live in that victim and giving up power, I'm taking ownership of my life. Right. And I've met just such incredible people on my journey of, like, you could, like, the most, what one might perceive as the most painful or traumatizing things, but they were able to reframe it and say, this is my purpose, is to teach people, is to help people, because I've been through that pain. I know what it's like.
It's the only thing that qualifies you and renders you an expert in what you're here to teach, is if you've lived it in your body. That's the qualifier. Okay, so you went from, basically your mother's basement, like this aspiring entrepreneur, to now I know that you are a wealthy man. Let's just own it. Let's just say it. Like you're not just wealthy financially, but you have a wealth of knowledge that you have and a generous, I would say, abundant soul. And sometimes the two of those
Thank
go
you.
hand in hand and sometimes they don't. There's a lot of wealthy people who don't have an integritous, abundant mentality. Um, Tell us, because I want to get into the 7 identities. So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, how did you happen upon that to make it your own? Because I've heard different variations on the theme that we hold these archetypes in us and all of this. And I've always been teaching about archetypes. So I love that you've called it identities,
Mm-hmm.
but share with us how you got these and then what they are.
Yeah, I'd love to. This is something on my journey that I discovered that we have 7 identities within us. We have 7 identities, and the journey was me awakening these different identities and giving them a name and giving them to make it to look at something from different perspective to okay, I'll just go over the 7. So one of them is the inner lover, right? We all have an inner lover within us that at times to step into, right? To just show, how do we show compassion? How do we give unconditional love, right? To stepping into our lover. There's also a time to step into our inner warrior, right? When we
Mm-hmm.
need to rise up and take action to summon that strength, right? Whatever fear or challenge or hesitation, to step into our warrior, to take action, to move forward, to find a way to tap into that inner doer, right? And third is we all have an inner sage, right? I believe that everyone has a sage within them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I believe that we all have an inner wisdom that we can go to, whether it's through meditation or whether it's finding ways to get into flow, right? We all have an inner wisdom that we can step into and zoom out, look at the bigger picture of life, right? And we also have an inner architect, right? The entrepreneur creator, where we can approach a problem and look at it from different angles and find what is the third option. When we're given 2 options, I always like to play this game when I was younger. It's like, what's the third option, right?
Mm.
Getting into that mind space of what can you create from ideation to creation, right? And we all have an inner healer, right? Where you go to for abundance of vitality and energy, right? Because sometimes we step into our architect and we're like, go, go, go. We need to scale. We need to 10x. We need to do all these things, grow, grow, grow. But if you're not paying attention to your health, if you're not paying attention to your energy, right,
Mm-hmm.
then none of that will matter, right?
So that
So what
healer
I'm
includes your health, includes your well-being and your nourishment, like healing yourself.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. Healing yourself, and it could also be internal healing and healing for others as well. But most of the time, it's most the perception is healing yourself, right? And the inner monarch. We all have a king or queen within us. I believe that to step into that leadership role, right? To inspire and lead others, to inspire and lead yourself, right? Because
Yeah.
leadership, I believe, starts with yourself first, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Starts with yourself first, and then to inspire those around you and to step into that royalty, right? There are some things that we can react to, or we might judge ourselves for. But what would your queen look like? How would your queen deal with this situation? If someone came up and just like got in your face and shouted at you, how would your queen react? Versus, oh, my warrior just wants to retaliate or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are different times to step into different perspectives. And I found that when you step into the different perspectives, you're able to see things from different point of views,
Mm.
right? Um,
Because
yeah,
yeah,
so
and really, don't you think it's a part of like what life station you're in? Like if you had something happen situationally, like let's say you had a death in the family or whatever, you'd have to go
mhm,
more into that. healer part, or you'd have to go into Sage and find out the wisdom behind why this is happening. What? Okay, did we hit all 7 of them? Have we hit?
Yeah. So yeah, the monarch, the warrior, the healer, the lover, the architect, the
Sage.
sage.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's one more. The inner child /
Yes.
artist.
So that is the inner child and artist, right? So we all have that. Most people relate and understand that we have an inner child within us, right? And this is something that I found actually so powerful, because this is the only identity where you grow from the inner child to being the true artist within, right? Because when you tap into that inner child in that artist, there's a part of us that can just find joy in things, and find that laughter, or find that, be in that creation mode, right? But our inner child at times is reacting. Like if somebody doesn't call you back, maybe you text them 2-3 times, or you reached out to them, or they don't call you back, maybe that inner child within you is like that not enoughness that can react to it, say like, oh, they must not like me. But what if they were in the hospital because they got in a car accident? But the inner child can react to things because of that emotion of that,
Right.
that need of wanting to feel like we're enough. And that's the number one fear that a lot of people have, is that like we're not enough. We're not enough to be loved.
We're all just walking around as wounded children inside.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
in your theory is beautiful, that like what emerges as you heal that is your path. Your path comes into view.
Yep. So through my journey, I've literally, it's not like I set out a number and it popped up 7. It literally was me awakening a part of me. Like it was through a breakthrough, a transformation, going through a Dickens process, where first my monarch just like unleashed, right? I just took ownership of my life. And throughout the journey, there was just these different awakenings, like through different process or different self-growth, that I realized, oh wow, there's a healer that I wasn't paying attention to, right? I was giving so much of myself. How often do we give so much of ourselves to others that we forget to give to ourselves first?
Yes.
Right?
And you know what's so interesting about what's happening in the planet right now? And I know that you are one of those very awakened males. You are among a handful of men I have interviewed like on this show. And so you made the cut, which means you're like a super awakened male, who is very in touch with his feminine and does not see it as anything other than the means by which this planet will wake up, is men stepping into their healer, their feminine, their, that enlightenment that comes with being balanced with the yin and yang inside of you.
Yes.
And I know a big part of your mission is to work with women entrepreneurs, because you recognize that we are in an era of rising feminine empowerment.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think it was from witnessing my mom like work multiple jobs and just like struggling with that. I felt when we are in flow is when you realize that there's a balance between the identities, because sometimes we are just too much in our warrior because of some pain that we felt, right? Like I was bullied when I first got here, right? And I was like struck across the face when I was like 6 years old. And I remember like training in Kung Fu and training in Taekwondo for like years, but I didn't realize till later that I wasn't fighting that person. I was fighting the fear itself. And so stepping into that feminine, there's such beautiful power in that, tapping into your lover to just show compassion, to just, come from a place of heart-centered leadership, right? That really, really speaks to me. And so I just recognize there's this, and just sharing my journey of the architect, of starting from nothing, of combining that and teaching people, teaching especially women, like this is the time to rise, right? If you look at how many CEOs are, out of 100 CEOs, how many of them are women? There's this tremendous opportunity to rise up and tap into other aspects. Like when do you need to tap into your queen mode, and when do you need to tap into your lover mode, right? So there are different opportunities, and it doesn't have to be, because I recognize on my journey, a fellow mastermind female entrepreneurs, that a lot of them can step into that masculine because they feel that's the way to succeed. But there are other ways as well of balancing that. And so that's something that I'm really excited to share with thought leaders, with women entrepreneurs, of creating and rising up.
So if you could just kind of put this in a pretty little bow for us, package it in the pretty little package and bow, how would you say is the easiest and most authentic way, natural way maybe, to step into these identities? Like, let's say you're in a situation that calls for you to be more of a warrior, but that's not your go-to. And I see this a lot with women. Like, I would say the warrior is more masculine, but I meet women a lot who just swallow it down, don't want to rock the boat, want to keep people happy. And it's not just women that do this, but I see it happening a lot with women. Um, how would you say, and I'm just using that as one example, just how to step into your warrior, but what is a natural way to align with these identities? I have my own way that works for me, but I'm curious how you are able to, or how you teach this, how to get into this.
Yeah. So one, I'm teaching right now, my team and I were creating a crisis program, how to help people shift out of the crisis into strength, into courage, into love, right? The premise behind it is how to step into the different identities for different situations. Like, how do you deal with, 42 million unemployed? Like, how do you step out of that and into, okay, I'm still going to tap into my inner sage to lay out a plan, right? So the example that you gave is, how can you step into these different identities? One, recognize that you are not you. And when I say that, is people think, when they think me, they think as a singular, like I am J Flow, I'm Sage Flow, right? I'm this one person. But recognizing that there are different parts of you, and think about it like a team. What if you had an internal team, and think about it like you can call upon different team members for different situations, right? Because at times, you ever wake up and you're being pulled in two directions, like, oh, I want this ice cream right now, but I also should really go for a run, right? That's actually the different parts of you. Maybe the inner child is reacting to something someone said that you perceived as hurtful, and your inner child wants to feel good in that moment and wants ice cream. But your healer is like, well, we just had ice cream yesterday, right? And so recognizing, being aware that there are different parts of you. And then the second thing that I teach people is anchor it in with so I'm all about teaching action and movement, right? So there are certain dances or certain positions or the way you stand, like a name. What would you give your warrior name? Like, what would you give your warrior name? Or what would you give your queen
Mine
name?
is Wonder Woman. I'm just saying, like, that's what I
Wonder
think.
Woman.
That's my warrior archetype is Wonder Woman.
Yes. Okay. So there are times like, something happens where, if something happens and you feel your energy, like, not at the vibration, normally the vibration or something like that, then look in the mirror, right? Look into the mirror, look into your own soul and say, like call yourself out. Say, what would Wonder Woman do right now? Would she, just feel rejected because this thing didn't happen the way it happened? What if it happened the way it should have happened? And what's the opportunity now, right?
Yeah.
And I like to anchor it in with songs, like also meditation, even smells, like different ways that brings you back into that state.
Yeah.
Because when you can bring and channel the state of a warrior, because usually it's not about the problem. Like, we may think it's the problem, but it's actually the state that we enter the problem into.
Right.
And so when you step into like finding different ways to bring out your Wonder Woman, right? Like, it could be a song, like about, there's a song about getting stronger, right? Like I when I need to step into a different identity, I channel that energy and I see myself. And then from that state, when you're in flow state, right? When you're in the zone, it doesn't have to be so hard, right? At
Right.
times we try to force it, or yeah, exactly, force it. But when you're in that flow state, when you are able to step into the different parts and give yourself that space to step into your
Yeah.
lover and be okay to tap into your lover, and then be
Yeah. And
okay
it's
to
not,
tap into your
in all
Mhm.
of these, it feels like this is how we are innately designed as souls. And that's how our body chemistry flows, each and every one of these. Like there's a reason your body kicks into adrenaline on its own. Like there's your warrior. Like there's a reason that you have pheromones. It's your liver archetype. There's a reason that you have, there's all of these ways that we try to put aside, and we don't work with that oftentimes, or we go into a fear response. And for
Mm.
me, I love that you brought on like start the meeting with them, because I teach the women in my Stand Speak Shine program to call on their council of seven, which are seven
Mm.
archetypes,
Yes.
that are aligned with who they resonate with. Like, like I mentioned Wonder Woman, but one of my others is Mary Magdalene. Like, I just have these seven women that I like in meditation, or just laying in bed or ruminating or journaling,
Yes.
call them together. And it's like,
Yes. Yes.
what would you do? What do you, and it's like, we innately know what they would say, but it doesn't surprise me if in some way, shape, or form they do come through and give their
Mm.
wisdom to
Mm.
us. We don't, everything's a mystery on the other side. But um, I love just this
That's
idea
beautiful.
of like building this tribe of support for you, of women and men that you align with in each of these identities.
Yes. And there's an internal seven and the external seven,
Mm,
right? So there's the internal seven of the different archetypes. And then what about each of those archetypes having a buddy or a mentor or a close friend that, you
mm,
know, that can channel that type of energy as well. But I love that you teach that, because, people, when they are able to step outside of just recognizing that maybe it's their inner child feeling some past trigger or some past pain, uh, and recognizing that, well, what if you're there for you
mhm,
always? What if
mm,
what if you're never alone?
mm,
What if you will be with you for the rest of your life? And what if you're your own best friend
mm.
as well? That, at times when we judge ourselves or we question, like, oh, did I do that right? Or could I have done that
Yeah.
better? When we step into that mode, it's a judgment. Versus what if, like what you do for your friends. Like I see this all the time. Like people like encouraging, like, hey, you got this. Like, oh, like brush yourself off, like stand back, stand tall, stand proud, you got this, right? And then for themselves, when we're in our heads, it's that inner child that can be like, hey, I really could have done better here, or I really, like that self-judgment. And just recognizing, what if you're your own best friend?
Yeah.
What if you get that love and encouragement always from within you?
Mm. And isn't that really where it's everything is always a reflection of our own relationship with self. And
Mm.
we're all just trying to figure out our own soul language and hear our own soul voice. And so I love that we can nurture these aspects of ourselves so that we
Mm.
harmonize our will force,
Mm.
and our force that we feel for love and contribution, and bring them into this empowering space versus like what you were saying, where that old paradigm is like achieve and
Right, right.
what did you call it? I think it's just that performance based worth that we've all been so
Mm.
programmed with,
Mm.
stepping out of that and into like, hey, this is
Mm.
me. This is how I do life. This is how I lead out. This is how I
Yes.
cultivate power. This is how I love people.
Mm. Yes.
Mm,
There's something so powerful. And one thing that I can share with your listeners is, one way that I learned to do that and I teach people is to look in the mirror every day, right? You can do this for, I did it for 30 days straight. You can start with, 7 days. Just every day, look in the mirror and just say, I love you for, and just go on a rant. Just like whatever comes to whatever, no, not thinking about it, just like, I love you for recycling. I love you for stepping up. I love you for sharing your voice. I love you for owning yourself. I love you for what, whatever comes up. Uh, get into that habit of verbalizing your self-love, right? And like looking into your soul and saying that, there is so much to love. Like, I truly, truly believe that everyone is amazing as they are, that we all are these, just to be alive, that we're there's this gratitude to express. And by giving yourself that love, how much can you show up for others? How much can you show up for other relationships or other change that you want to make
Yes.
into the world?
Yes. And what a beautiful question to, when we're suffering, like to just go inside and say, how can I lift someone else right now, even though I feel like I'm drowning a little bit? Um,
Mm,
it's a powerful, powerful question. There's actually something called helper's high. It's a psychological phenomenon that I learned about when I was getting my psych degree. And it's basically
mm,
that. It's like there is a literal
mm,
biochemical,
I-
physiological shift um,
mm,
that can literally take people out of just this anatomy of loneliness and into a space of
mm,
like regeneration very quickly.
mm,
I just think of my teenagers. Well, they're not, they're coming out of their teen years now, but my older kids are young adults. And when they were teenagers, I was always encouraging them to do humanitarian stuff and service projects. And it was always like, oh, mom, duh. No one feels like doing that stuff when they're a teenager. But when they actually
mm,
started it, like half the battle was just getting them started. But then when they actually got into it, they're like you were saying about flow, and that's why you're called
mm,
the sage flow. Um,
mm,
but when but when they started, a flow happened, like a magic took over. And
mm,
they came home animated and less negative. And it's like, oh, there is really some beauty here. And Jesus talked about it,
mhm,
and the Buddha and all of the ancient religions and saints, sages, and mystics all talked about this beautiful
mhm,
chemistry or upliftment or enlightenment that happens when we lift someone else in the midst of our own suffering.
mm. That's so true. The secret to living is giving.
Clear
It
secret to
really
living is
is.
giving. And that's one of my new mantras. Thank you for that. Thank Tony
Mhm.
Robbins for that, I guess, right?
Yes,
He's
yes,
an amazing planet shifter himself. Well,
yes,
um,
for sure.
I love that we were able. I've been wanting to talk more about archetypes. I've been wanting to talk more about helping people to refine their identity and bring their soul voice out, and in a way that you teach, in a very practical, like, here are the seven. So I'm just going to repeat the seven, and you tell me if I
Hmm.
got them right.
Hmm.
Inner child / artist,
Yeah.
sage, lover,
Hmm.
monarch,
Hmm. Hmm.
architect, warrior, and
Hmm.
healer.
Yes, you got it.
Yay. So I'm
You
just
got
off the
it.
top looking at, I'm in architect mode right now because I'm building some structures in place
Hmm.
that I think are going to help
Yes.
more people. And I'm
Hmm.
also in healer, just getting my body prepared. And of course, I'm always trying to play an artist and wound my childhood, karmic
Mm.
karmic wounds with bringing more forward for humanity in the way that I create. So I can
Mm.
see myself coming in and out of these. And I've always loved the queen archetype, that monarch, sovereign, like, don't mess with me,
Hmm.
benevolent force for good, walking this
Mm.
earth.
Yes.
So, but,
Yes. Yeah, you radiate that energy about you.
oh,
Yep.
thank you. Well, that was one thing that when I met you, that you had a presence about you that was very unique, even down to how you were dressed as a sage. Um, it's like he's young, but yet he's wise. And you aligned with that through the way you were dressing and speaking and just your presence. So it's fun to see now that I know these archetypes and see how you stepped into them and owned them in yourself, in your being.
Mm. Yes, thank
Well,
you.
and we'll just seed this a little bit with our listeners, but you and I are going to be kind of collaborating on a couple of fun projects with breathing and, meditation, and using ways to get into the mind body in my space with my community.
Hmm.
How can people find you online?
Yes, so you can follow me on Instagram at Saje Flow, with the SAJE Flow,
Mhm.
and also on Facebook, Sage Flow Official. And I'm just so excited to share. Like, we've been creating this crisis program as a way to really empower people, and we're going to be launching that, and we're going to be launching a podcast as well. Just having people share about like everyday heroes, sharing that how they went through their dark nights of the soul, and what they learned from it, how they came out of it. We've been looking for stories about what people's journeys are. So you can find
Beautiful.
us through Sage Flow.
Sage Flow.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time. It's always great to talk to you, and the vibe that ensues when we start talking about these ways to help influence and
Yes.
support more people. And I know you're going to have those 1 billion breakthroughs, and I'm part of it. So
Yes. Thank you so much. And once again, I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to just connect with you and to share with your listeners. And you just have such a beautiful heart and soul in what you're teaching people. It's so needed in this world. And thank you for your contribution to the world.
Thank you. Inner child / artist, sage, lover, monarch, architect, warrior, healer. There's a time and a place for all these bad boys and girls to come out and play. And you'll know when it's aligning for you to step into a different way of being, to call on your inner reserves and fire up your biochemistry or calm it down to meet the demands around you, because we are moving into an era of this earth where things are a little bit more nuanced, things are a little bit more subtle, and they're also very much in duality, black, white, good, bad, right, wrong. So as we move forward with healing people and influencing them in powerful ways, we need to learn how to access these aspects of ourselves so that we can be more lined up to answer the call of our heart, help more people. And I'm coming up actually with a 4-week course. It's in the works. It's going to be launching later this month, and I'm super excited to tell you more about it as it gets closer. But it will be a 4-week journey into claiming more confidence, to how do you answer the call of your soul? How do you become a soulpreneur? And how do you step into that role so that you can truly shift humanity in your own right, while all the way knowing that you are whole and not broken at your core, that you are in full bloom and splendor as a divine being. Please join the Facebook group Women Seeking Wholeness. I have not been the best at nurturing that and coming in and doing Facebook Lives, but that's definitely on my radar, is to open up more candid conversations so that we can all support each other in community to answer the call of our hearts and move forward on our soul path.